Welcome to the GIS Center's Lunchless Learn series. Today's session is titled First Encounters of the GIS Kind, an Introduction to the Basics of Geographic Information Systems using QGIS. This is the first of 4 in a series of Lunchless Learns. My name is Jennifer Strang, and I'm a GIS analyst at the Dalhousie University Libraries. Before starting, it's assumed that QGIS is loaded on the machine that you'll be using for this session. If not, you can go to https://www.qgis.org/download and download the appropriate version for your machine. It is also assumed that you have downloaded and unzipped the data for this session. This should have been sent to you by email before the class started. If not, check your email now and download the file. If you're unfamiliar with zipping and unzipping files, please just send me a note in the chat and I'll help you out with that.
So the agenda for today is we're going to talk about what GIS is. Then we're going to plan a trip to Halifax using QGIS. We're going to review the basics of what you learned, and we'll have questions and answers happening throughout as they come up. So what happens if you have a question? Please feel free to type the question in the chat window throughout the session. If it's something that's general, I'll answer it in the window so everybody can see. If it's something that's specific to you or your machine or your setup, then I will probably just start a separate session with you, so it'll only be a private session between you and myself. Just remember, there is no such thing as a stupid question. If ever there was, I'm pretty sure I probably asked them. The only thing I ask is to be patient if there's lots of questions coming in, because answering questions online does take a little more time than it does if you're in person. We're going to start off with what is GIS. GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems. The things to know about GIS is absolutely everywhere. It's used every day and it's used worldwide. When I say it's used everywhere in your day-to-day life, it's used in traffic signals, making sure the flow of traffic is good. It's used when delivering all of those Amazon packages to your door. It's used in flight planning. It's used in grocery stores, deciding what to stock in which stores and things like that. So again, it's used in everyday work behind the scenes that you probably don't even realize. And again, it is used worldwide. It isn't just used in the developed country, it is being used in the developing countries as well. It's just sometimes the data is a little harder to get to, but absolutely, it is absolutely everywhere. So what sorts of things do you do with GIS? Well, it's going to help you manage the environment. That environment is very much up to you. If you're in forestry, it's going to help you manage the forest. If you're an urban planner, it's going to help you manage the city. If you're an architect, it's going to help you manage the projects that you're working on. It's going to help you work more efficiently. Now, with a caveat here, this really depends on the fact that you know what the software is doing and how it works. It can start to allow you to work a lot more efficiently than having to do things by pen and paper, or even if it is possible at all. And if you're able to do that, you're going to be able to provide better customer service. So this has been a big push for people. So if you're working more efficiently, you're able to answer questions better. That's going to help keep your customers happy. And if you're doing all that, it's going to help you ultimately save money. So specifically, what do GISs do? Well, they're going to help you create maps. They're going to help you find information. They will also allow you to create and edit data that currently exists, and this is going to help you solve problems. Ultimately, the how and the why are going to be up to you and your field of work. So again, GIS isn't specific to one particular field. It's a general tool that can be used in a wide swath of areas. So what are our learning objectives for today? What do you hope to be able to do at the end of this session? Well, you should be able to explore a GIS map and get information about the various features on it. You should be able to describe the structure of a GIS map. You'll be able to explain how GIS will represent real-world objects in a map. You're going to learn how to access the information that's on your map, this feature information. You're going to be able to describe relationships of the map features, and you're going to see how GIS can be used to solve a particular problem.
We're going to dive right into QGIS by using an example. In this example, we're going to be planning a trip to Halifax. Specifically, we're going to look at finding a hotel, ideally a Delta hotel that's close to the water, as I've never been to the East Coast. I figured that'd be great to be close to the water. I'd also like to find information about attractions and shopping facilities that are close by the hotel, as well as look into the transportation options. Ideally, I'd like to try to travel via bus or public transportation as opposed to renting a car. So we're going to start by opening up QGIS. So in the search window, down by the Windows icon at the bottom of your screen, you're going to type in QGIS. In the pop-up that appears, you're going to choose the QGIS desktop application. The version that we're using in this example is 3.40.6. Now we're ready to dive into our example. So to start, we're going to begin by opening the software. So you can see down here in the search window, we're going to type in QGIS, and we're going to choose the QGIS desktop application. So you can see the version that I'm running is 3.40.6, which was the long-term stable release. So it will take a moment or two to open up, but ultimately the software will open and it should look something like this.
So now that you have QGIS open, we're going to open an existing project. To do that, you're going to go to the Project tab near the top of the screen. You're going to go to Open, and you're going to search for the folder that you downloaded and unzipped. Okay, it should be called lunchlist learn _intro _QGIS. And the file you're going to open is halifaxtravel.qgz.
Now we have QGIS open, we're able to open the project that I supplied to you. So I'm going to take a look here at my downloads folder, and you can see this is the zipped file. I unzipped it, and you can see it's created this folder here, the Lunchlist Learn Intro QGIS. So that's the location where we're going to go to open our project. So to do that again, we're going to go up here to our project tab. We're going to choose the open option. Then we're going to go to the folder where you've downloaded the data. And again, for me, this is in my downloads folder. And there's my Halifax travel.qgz, and I'm going to choose the open button. So it's giving me a warning here that is an older project, and that's because I did create it some time ago. But you can see our project has opened successfully.
A little bit about how QGIS works. So QGIS is an open source GIS that's available for multiple platforms. You're going to access tools through drop-downs, buttons, and various windows. QGIS uses plugins to extend the software and what it can do. The plugins are developed by independent organizations or developers, so be aware that they can have various levels of stability or currentness and things like that. The other thing that to note about QGIS, it uses a separate but linked layout window when you're getting ready to output your final maps for printing.
So here is your QGIS window. You'll notice at the top we have a number of tabs that will open up drop downs that will give you access to additional tools. You'll also notice there's a number of buttons that are available for you to use depending on what you're trying to do. You may also notice that at this point some of these are grayed out, and this will be dependent on what's going on within your map and what you're trying to do and what you're currently selected on. You'll also notice that your map is the main portion of your screen, and this is where you will see most of the work that you're doing. you'll notice that there are panels both on the left and the right side. These will help you either run additional tools or find out additional information about what you're looking at.
And this is your layout view that we're looking at here. So you can see in this case we have a main map and an inset map. You'll notice that you have the drop downs again up here at the top. You'll see that there's a number of buttons for adding and zooming around and moving around your layout over here to the left. On the right hand side, you're going to notice that there is this items tab up here and this series of items that are listed below. This becomes really important because these are individual items that are showing on your map. So again, we'll take a closer look at this a little later. But again, if I can choose to check or uncheck, and the item will appear or disappear on the map. So this is the layout window that's associated with our main QGIS. The next thing we're going to do is explore our Canada map. So this is our inset map showing where we are located within the larger area. So in the QGIS window, we want to turn off the Halifax group and turn on the inset map group. In the layers window, that's just to the left of the main map. Then we're going to adjust the area of the map that we're looking at. To do this, you're going to go to the browser window and under Spatial Bookmarks, under the project Bookmarks, you're going to right click on Nova Scotia Inset, and in the pop-up, you're going to choose Zoom to Bookmark.
Next, we're going to investigate our inset map that we saw in our layout. So if you remember in our layout, we had two maps, one that was of the Halifax area and the other showing where that Halifax area was in a larger area. Okay, so how do we investigate that inset map? Well, to do that, we're going to go into our layers group here. We're going to uncheck the Halifax option here, and you'll notice your main map goes to blue, so you're not seeing anything. Then what we're going to do again in your layers window or panel on the left side, we're going to scroll down and we're going to turn on the inset map. Okay, and you can see we now have a different set of layers that are being shown in our main map window. But it still doesn't quite look right. If you remember, our inset map was showing basically Atlantic or the Maritimes, not Atlantic Canada, because it didn't include Newfoundland. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go up here to our Spatial Bookmarks. We're going to expand it. Under the project Bookmarks, we're going to click on the Nova Scotia inset map. So I can either double click on it or I can choose to right click and say zoom to the bookmark. And you can see when I do that, it zooms out so you can see basically where Halifax is in the larger scheme of things.
Next, we're going to explore the inset map data. So what I like you to do is to turn on and then off the provincial data. To do this, you're going to uncheck and then check the box that's next to Canada GeoGratis layer. Okay, so basically you're able to control what layers are currently being shown on your map. It's also important to notice the name of this. So when I downloaded this data, I actually changed the name to be something meaningful, giving me some indication of what the data is. Okay, so Canada indicates it's data for all of Canada, and GeoGratis was actually the website where I downloaded the data from originally.
So now that we've focused on our inset map, we're going to look at the data that's in this map. So again, we're going to go to this layers panel, and you can see here, or hopefully you remember, that we had two different maps, one for the Halifax area, and you can see here these are all the various layers that are in it. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to minimize it just so we can maximize our screen space. So you can see there's the button there. So we've minimized that data. The second set of data was from our inset map. And you can see here, we have different layers that make up this map. So if you want to see a layer, you're going to make sure it's checked on. If you don't want to see the layer, you can just check it off. Okay, so on, you make sure it's checked. Off, you can uncheck it. So you can do this with any of the layers, and you can see if we have different data sets within there, we can individually turn off the various other options. Okay, so it doesn't appear we have any green in this one, but you can see if there were anything else in here, or maybe it's just off our map area, we are able to turn it on and off. So again, in our maps, we have complete control over which layers we'd like to see or not.
So now we're going to return to the Halifax data because ultimately we're looking for a hotel in Halifax. So how do I do this? I need to turn the Halifax data on. So in the layers window, you're going to check the box that's next to the Halifax group and uncheck the box next to the inset map group. Then in the browser window on the left-hand side, you're going to go to your Spatial Bookmarks, and under the project bookmarks, you're going to right-click on Halifax Peninsula and choose Zoom to Bookmark.
Now we're going to go back to the Halifax data. Again, this is because our trip is to Halifax and we want to explore that data a little bit more closely. So how do you do that? So we're essentially going to go down here to the layers window. We're going to turn on the Halifax map while turning off the inset map. Okay, so you can see here's our data. Next, we're going to go up here to our spatial bookmarks. This time, we're going to go to the Halifax Peninsula. We're going to right-click and say Zoom to Bookmark. And you can see we're back to the same extent as we were when we started.
So I'd like you to zoom around and look at the data that's in the Halifax area. So to do that, you can zoom in by clicking on the Zoom In button near the top of your screen, or you can click the Control-Alt+ button on your keyboard and then clicking on the map where you'd like to zoom in. If you've got a center roller button on your mouse, you can simply use that to roll in and zoom around your area. If you'd like to move around your map, you can click the Pan button, which is the button that looks like the hand, and then left click down and drag in the direction you'd like to move.
Next, we're going to learn a little bit more about Halifax by getting a closer look. So how do you do that? Well, one way is to go up here at the top and click your zoom in button. So you can see here, if I click that, I have the option to either draw a box around the area that I'm interested in. So you can see here, or conversely, because I still have it selected, I can just do a single click and that will zoom in as well. The second option I have to zooming in or in on my data would be using the Control-Alt+ button. So again, if you use that from your keyboard, then you can do a single click in and you can easily get into the various areas of your map. The third and final way you can zoom in on your data, if you have a center mouse roller button on your mouse, you can just simply zoom in or zoom out. Okay. Again, you'll notice up here at the top, there is a zoom out button as well. So again, you can click in your zoom out and you can zoom out, or you can use your center roller button. Okay, if you have it. Or again, for zooming in, Control-Alt+. For zooming out, Control-Alt-. The other thing that can become very handy is to pan around your data to move in your data set. To do that, you need to click the Pan button. That's this button up here at the top that looks like a hand. So you click on that and then you can left click down and you can drag in the direction that you want to move. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is spend a little bit of time using the skills you just developed to try to find the Killam Library. To help you understand where that data is, we are located on University Avenue. So if you look here, this red double lined street is University Avenue, and the Killam Library is at the end of it. So again, I'm using my center roller button to move in, or again, you can use your plus button and just do a single click in. Okay, if you want to pan around, you're going to use your hand button up here, and you're going to see the other building. So here's the Killam Library, here is the Chemistry Building, Henry Hicks, and Life Sciences. Okay, so again, take a little bit of time, make sure you understand how your zooming in, zooming out, and panning works. There is one additional way that you can change the zoom in level that you're looking at, and that would be using your scale option. Okay, so in order to do this, you can look at the bottom of your screen and you should notice there is a scale blank that you can fill in. What I'd like you to do is type in 20,000 and take a look at your map. Then change the volume from 20,000 to 19,999 and observe the changes in your map. Hopefully you'll see there is something quite substantial in the difference. Then we need to think about why this might be. The fourth and final way to zoom in or out on your data is to adjust the scale. So how do you do that? If you go down here to the bottom right-hand corner, you'll notice there's a scale option that you can adjust. So what I've suggested you do is type in 20,000. Okay, notice I didn't have to put the 1 colon. I can just type in 20,000 and then hit the enter key. And you'll notice that I've zoomed out. Therefore, the bigger the number, the more zoomed out I am. Okay, so here's what it looks like at a scale of 1 to 20,000. What happens when I put in 19,999? You'll notice that the area that I'm looking at basically didn't change at all, but you'll notice I can now see the buildings. This is because the buildings are a scale-dependent layer. If you look over here on the left-hand side in the Layers window, if I expand my Halifax, you'll notice if I scroll down here, the buildings are visible. If I change this to 20,000, you'll notice that it is grayed out. This is the indication to you that this is a scale dependent layer, that you can't see it all the time. Okay, even though it's checked on that you should see it, because it is a scale dependent layer, which is a base at 20,000 for me, that anything that's out more than that, zoomed out more than that, or has a smaller scale or a larger area, you will not see the buildings. But as you zoom in, the buildings will become visible. So I purposely picked 20,000 to be a good scale to see the buildings, because remember, buildings are, when you add layers to your map, it's there to help you understand what's going on. It was my decision that showing the buildings at a scale that was larger than 20,000, had a larger number, basically created more clutter to the map and made it harder to understand and read. 20,000 was a good scale that I could start to understand, and the building started to add additional information as opposed to take away and look like clutter.
So now that we've learned a little bit about moving around our screen and how to figure out how to do that, we're going to get back to our problem at hand. So remember, the problem that we're looking for is, first off, we want to find a hotel that's ideally a Delta hotel that is close to the waterfront. So in order to do that, we need to turn our hotel layer on. So to do this, you're going to go to your layer window on the left-hand side, and you're going to check the hotel layer on that happens to be in the Halifax group. Then what I'd like you to do is find a hotel and then click on the Identify Features button. So that's the one that has the little I in it. And then click on a hotel. Or conversely, you can hit the Control-Shift-I button on your keyboards and then click on a hotel. And it's going to give you information about the hotel that you clicked on.
So now we're back to our problem at hand, which is finding the ideal hotel, which for me is a Delta hotel because I collect the points that's close to the waterfront. So how do I do that? I'm going to go to the layers panel here on the left-hand side, and I'm going to find my hotels layer, and I'm going to check that box on. Okay. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select it. Okay. You can tell that it's selected when you have the blue box around it. Then we're going to click on the Identify Features button up here at the top. Okay, so I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to click on one of these orange dots, which you can see here symbolizes the hotels. So I'm going to click on this orange dot here, and you can see I'm getting information about that hotel. So you can see the one I selected is the Prince George, and it's at 1725 Market Street. If I don't want to use my button, I can also use the Control Shift and I button all at the same time and then click on a hotel, and I'm going to get the same results as clicking the button up here. So again, I can click through here and I can look and try to identify all of the Delta hotels if that's what I'm looking to do.
So querying each individual hotel label is not particularly efficient. So what about if I turn the labels of all the hotels on at the same time? So how do you do that? So in the layers window that's to the left, you're going to right click on hotels, and in the pop-up, you're going to click on the Show Labels option.
So hopefully you'll agree that clicking on each one of these dots is not a very efficient way to find all the Delta hotels. So what happens if I just label them all? Well, sounds like a good idea. How do I do that? So to do that, we're going to again go to the Layers panel here on the left-hand side. We're going to go to the hotels and I'm going to right click. What we're going to do now is we're going to go Show Labels. Okay, and you'll notice the name of all the hotels will automatically appear on my screen, including at least one Delta hotel here.
So hopefully you've realized turning the labels on does make it more efficient to find our Delta hotels. But what happens if there's some Delta hotels that are just off screen, or perhaps on the Dartmouth side? So how do I find all of the Delta hotels at once? So in order to do that, we're going to make sure that hotels is selected in the layers window there on the left. Then you're going to click on the Select Features tool. Okay, so you can see by the icon, it looks like a yellow box with a gray box on top of it. You should note the icon may look a little different because the drop-down arrow beside it will allow you to select different options of selecting features. So just be aware of that. If you hover over the icons, you will get the tool names, so that can help. So in the window that appears, you're going to click the Exclude Fields button next to the name line, and then select the box in the pop-up as Contains. Then you're going to type Delta in the blank that's next to name and click Select Features. And then click on Show in Table. Okay, so all the hotels that meet your criteria will be highlighted in yellow, and in the table you'll be able to see the attributes of those informations of the hotels that met your criteria.
So hopefully you'll agree having labels on is much more efficient than using your Identify button on each of the individual hotels. But is there a better way? Well, it turns out there is. What we want to do is find only the Delta hotels. So how do you do that? We're going to go up here to the Select Features button. Okay, so again, you'll notice there's a drop down beside it, so it may look a little bit different, but we're going to use this first option here. And in the window that appears, we're going to uncheck this Exclude Fields. Okay, and we're going to change it to Contains. Under the name, the field we want it to contain is the word Delta. Okay, then we're going to go down here to the bottom and we're going to choose the Select Features option or button, as well as the Show in Table button. Okay, and you'll notice here that there are 4 Delta hotels that exist in this data set. There's Delta Hotels, Delta Sydney, Delta Halifax, and Delta Barrington. Okay, so this is a much more efficient way to get all of the hotels that you want. Okay, you will also notice, I'm going to minimize or close this window for now, that the hotels that are selected are in this yellow color here. So again, there's the Delta Halifax as well as the Delta Barrington. Presumably the Delta Sydney is off screen in the Sydney area.
The next step we're going to do is get information about the attractions in the area. So if you haven't already, close your pop-up window. Then click on the Layers window and make sure the attraction is checked. Okay. I'd also like you to choose the Open Attribute Table. You do this by right-clicking on it and choose Open Attribute Table. If you're required to change from Form View to Table View, just click the button in the lower right corner of the screen.
Next, we're going to spend some time on the attractions. So to do that, we're going to again go to our Layers panel on the left-hand side, and we're going to find our attractions option and check the box that's next to it. Okay, so now we can see the yellow stars that appear on our map. We've also selected it so it's turned blue. We're going to right-click on it, and we're going to choose the Open Attribute Table option here. You should notice that the table automatically appears here. So there's two versions of this table, either the form view or the table view. If you want to change it to the table view, so this is the form view, I can click on the button in the lower right corner here. And you can see here is the table with all of the various attributes that make up this particular layer.
So next, take some time and learn a bit about the attractions in the HRM area. So scroll through your table and take a look at how many attractions there are, what sort of information we have about each. Then what I'd like you to do is to sort the table based on its name. Okay, so right-click on the name field. So this is the name of the attractions. When you right-click, a pop-up is going to appear. Choose Sort. When you click on Sort, a new window is going to appear. At the top of that window, there's a button. You're going to click on it where it says Define Sort Order in Attribute Table, and then click OK.
So let's take a quick look at this attribute table. You can see here the first field is our name field. Okay, so this is the name of the various attractions in the Halifax area. You'll notice then I have information about the address. Okay, so the address, the city, the province, the postal code. I also have the phone and the fax number if they have it, as well as an X and a Y location. So if I have a GPS, I can easily plug that in to find out where exactly these locations are. The other thing I'd like you to notice is that there are 29 features. So if you notice up here, there's a total of 29 features. I could also scroll through my list and you can see there are 29 features here, okay, because this is just a number or a calculation here of the number of records. What I'd like you to do is to put them in alphabetical order. Again, this is a pretty small list, so it's not particularly difficult, but we're going to right-click on the name field and we're going to choose the sort option. Okay, this brings up a new pop-out. We're going to choose define the sort order, and then we're going to click the OK option. Okay, you'll notice that our list is now in alphabetical order with the Alexander Keith's Original Brewery at the top, and if we scroll down to the bottom, the final or feature that's number 29 is now the Thomas McCulloch Museum, which is here at Dalhousie University.
So I've heard good things about the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic, so I'd like you to scroll through the attribute table until you find the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic and click on the number box that's just to the left of the record. When you do that, it will highlight it. Then I'd like you to close your table. You should notice that one of the stars is highlighted in a brighter yellow color. That indicates the attraction that you selected.
Because I've heard good things about the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic, I need to see where it is in relation to the Delta Barrington, which is where I'm staying. Okay, so how do I do that? I'm going to scroll through my attribute table of attractions. And you can see here, number 13 is the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic. So I'm going to select the number that's just to the left of the record. And when you see that, you'll notice it turns blue. You'll also should notice, hopefully, that one of your stars changed to a slightly brighter yellow. Okay, so you can see this is the one that's close to the water, and this yellow is a little bit different. Again, just so you can see the difference here, because it is quite subtle. I'm going to turn it off. So here's the duller color. Keep an eye on it again, and you can see it's the brighter yellow color. So I'm going to leave it as that for now, because the only color it really doesn't show up particularly well on is these stars. Okay, now I can close my attribute table, and you can see the one star is highlighted, and you can see here is the Delta Barrington, which is the hotel I plan on staying at.
So if you remember correctly, I was hoping to not have to rent a car. So I wanted to measure the distance between the hotel and the museum. So in order to do this, I'm going to click on the Measure Line tool. Then I'm going to click on the Delta Barrington Hotel and move my mouse over to the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic. And I'm going to single click to create angles so I can travel along a road, so I don't want to do a straight line distance throughout the buildings. When you get to the end, you can double click and then verify the distance.
So now that I have my hotel and I know the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic and its location, I want to actually verify the distance. So the first thing I'm going to do is zoom in. So again, I'm just using my center roller button, or I could use the plus button up here and then just zoom into those two locations. Okay. So once I've done that, I'm going to click on the Measure Line tool up here at the top. And then I'm going to do a left click, a single left click on my hotel, and I'm going to keep single left clicking to change direction. Okay, and when I get to the end here, I'm going to do a single left click and then a right click. Okay, so you can see here the length of each one of my segments. So the first one was 22 meters, then 278 to 233, for a total distance of about 530 meters. Okay, if the unit of meters isn't convenient for me and I prefer it in miles, I can use this drop down here and I can use the miles button. You can see it's 0.33 of a mile. Either way, it's still a walkable distance for me.
Before we get started on the next bit of finding out where the shopping centers are, I'd like you to turn off the measure tool by clicking the close button at the bottom of the pop-up window. Then I'd like you to clear the selected features. To do this, you're going to go back to your main QGIS window and click on the Deselect Features button.
Since we're finished with the measure tool, we're going to close that out. So we're just going to hit the close button in the measure tool. And then we're going to click on the Deselect Features button. So that's located up here. So when I click on that, you should notice that my yellow actually went back to its original yellow color. Okay, so now we're ready to move on to the next step.
Now we got to get ready to find our shopping centers. The first thing I'd like you to do is show a map of the Halifax Peninsula. To do this, go to your browser window that's just to the left of your screen, go to the Spatial Bookmarks, Project Bookmarks, and specifically Halifax Peninsula. When you right click on that, select Zoom to the bookmark. Then I'd like you to turn off the streets, the attractions, and the hotel labels. To do that, in the Layers window, in the Halifax group, you're going to uncheck Streets. You're also going to uncheck Attractions. And then you're going to right-click on Hotels and uncheck the Show Labels.
Next, we're going to find out about where the shopping centers are and figure out if the transportation is available through public transportation. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go to our browser window over here on the left-hand side near the top. We're going to go to our Spatial Bookmarks, Project Bookmarks, and the Halifax Peninsula. And we're going to double click on that or right click and say Zoom to the bookmark. Okay. Next, we're going to turn off some of our layers to make this map a little easier to understand. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off our streets. Okay. We are going to turn off our attractions. So again, that's this button here. And for the hotels, what we're going to do is we're going to right click on it and we're going to uncheck show labels. Okay, so that's cleaned up our map quite a bit.
Now I'd like you to turn on the shopping centers and then determine the method of transportation. So to do this, I'd like you to go into the layers window in the Halifax group and check the box next to shopping centers so they're turned on. Then I'd like you to show the labels for the shopping centers. To do that, again, you're going to right click on shopping centers. In the pop-up, you're going to choose show labels.
Next, we're going to focus in on the shopping centers. So to do that, we're going to again go to our layers panel over here on the left-hand side. We're going to turn on the shopping centers. So we're going to check the box next to shopping centers, and you'll notice these purple squares will appear on our map. Next, we want to know what shopping centers these are. So we're going to right click here and we're going to choose the show labels option. And you'll notice now that we have the labels for all of our various shopping centers.
So I'd like to get some information about the bus stop that's closest to Park Lane. To do that, I'd like you to click the Identify tool, which is the I button within the blue dot. And you're going to make sure Bus Stops is selected in the Layers window, and then click on the bus stop that's closest to Park Lane. Okay. If the bus stops aren't showing, then click on the little triangle to minimize the layer that is showing and find the bus stops layer and open it by clicking on the triangle to open that up. Then check your results.
Now we're interested in the bus stops that are close to Park Lane. Okay, because I've heard good things about Park Lane and I want to see where the buses are. So what we want to do is we want to find the bus stops layer in our layers panel on the left-hand side. We're going to make sure that it's selected. Then we're going to go up here to the Identify Features button. And then we're going to click on the bus stops that are closest to Park Lane, which is this one here. Okay, you'll notice over here on the right-hand side in the Identify results, there are two bus stops that are listed here. Okay, so you can see here that there's two of them, and you can see the information about the first one there, as well as the second one. And if you want to see the second one, we're going to click on the down button here, and you can see here are the two go time numbers. You'll notice that there, if you look at the location, there is the Spring Garden Road WB at Dresden Road. So this is for westbound. And the second one, which is on the other side of the road, says it's Spring Garden EB or eastbound at Dresden Road. So if we zoom in, basically these are on opposite sides of the street, okay, going in opposite directions. So ultimately, we have the information we need. Well, sort of. We're going to end it there. But realistically, what we'd want to do is we want to make sure that the buses that go to this stop actually bring us closer to the hotel. So again, we want to make sure we're on the right side of the road, and we want to make sure that the buses that actually stop there are bringing us closer to our hotel and not farther away. Next, we're going to use the hyperlink that's found in the results to get additional information about Historic Properties Privateers Wharf website. Okay, so how do you do that? We're going to zoom into Historic Properties Privateers Wharf. Okay, we're going to click on the Identify button at the top. In the Layers window, we're going to make sure that we've selected on the shopping centers, okay, to make sure it understands which layer of information we're going to identify. Then in the Identify Results window in Historic Properties Privateers Wharf, you're going to scroll down to the website feature, and then you're going to click on it. A new browser screen will open and should show you the contents of this link. So we're going to scroll into Historic Properties, Privateer's Wharf. So you can see that's in Halifax, just close to the water here. So I'm going to zoom in on it. You can see I've already got my Identify button selected, so that's good news, but I want to click on Shopping Centers over here in the Layers panel. And this is just to indicate to the system which layer I want to find information about. So then I'm going to click on Historic Properties, Privateer's Wharf. And then in the Identify results that opens up here on the right-hand side, you'll notice there's the website option, and then I can click this link. Okay, I'll take a moment and the link opens up and you can see information about Historic Properties, Privateer's Wharf, and I can see what the address is. I can contact them and perhaps find information about the hours or what shops are there.
QGIS allows for users to create output maps or layouts for printing or bringing into other software packages. These layouts are different from the live map canvas in a number of different ways. Layouts will come up in an entirely new window that is linked to the main QGIS page. It's going to allow you to add additional map features like legends, scale bars, north arrows, titles, etc. You can also have multiple maps be shown on a single page, as we demonstrated at the beginning with the inset map as well as the main map. It also allows you to customize the page size and the format as well as the resolution of your output map. So how do you get to your QGIS layout? Well, you're going to go to your Project tab. You're going to go to Layouts and choose the Tourism option.
So now we're going to take a look at the layout in QGIS. The first thing we're going to do is close out of our hyperlink page there. To do this, we're going to go to your Project tab up here in the corner, and you're going to go to the Layouts option and then Tourism. And what you can see is that a brand new page opens up. So again, notice this is not the same as your main map page. It's opening in an entirely different window. The other thing that you'll notice is we're able to see multiple maps on the same page. So you can see here is our inset map, and here is our map of Halifax. You can also see that there's a title, a legend, scale bar, as well as credits. Okay, so again, this page is good for printing or putting out to a different software package that doesn't understand how to read the main QGIS files.
So, a bit of information about how to understand the QGIS layout. The tools on the left side of the map is considered the layout toolbox, and this is where your various items can be added to your page, and you can also move items around the layout. Okay, the right side of the page has a series of panels. At the top is the items, and this is where you can access properties for all of the individual features that are on your page. These properties can be viewed or changed in the item properties that appears in one of the panes below. At the top of the page are additional tabs and tools for more general items that are basically relating to the entire map. So here is your layout page. You're going to notice on the left-hand side is the layout toolbar, and this will allow you to do various things within your map. If you hover over them, it'll tell you what the buttons are for. So again, if you click on it, pardon me, and hover over it, it will tell you what they do. Okay. So again, move item content. You'll notice these ones with the plus signs. These are to allow you to add various things to your map. So you can add an entirely new map. So you can see I actually have 2 maps on this particular layout. I can add labels or scale bars or legends, attribute tables, whatever I want. So this is where you add things to your map. On the right-hand side over here, particularly at the top, you're going to see the items panel. And the items panel are essentially the items that you added from over here on the left-hand side. So as you add an item, it's automatically going to appear over here in the item list. Okay. And if you want to change any properties of any of these items, so for instance, if I click on Nova Scotia in this particular case, you can see this is giving me information. It highlights it on my map, and it's going to allow me to change the various properties of that particular item. So in this case, if I wanted to adjust the font, I could do that. Okay. If you want to do more general things that would kind of affect the entire layout, they tend to be the buttons and the drop downs towards the top up here. Okay, so some examples would be dealing with alignment and things like that. So align selected items to the left, you get a drop down so you can align other directions. You can change whether you want the order of things coming to the forefront or dropping them back, and distribution of things along your page. So again, these tend to be more general things relating to the entire project, whereas the things on the left-hand side tend to be adding and moving around the maps in general. So that is your layout window. So you might be a bit confused. How do you have two different maps in the layout while you only have one map source? Well, it turns out you need to style and create the maps separately. So when you finish the first map, you're going to add it to the layout, then make sure both the extent and the layers are locked. Then when you add the second map, it's not going to change what's being shown on your map. So how do you lock those things? To lock the extent and position, in the items panel, select the lock checkbox beside the item that you want to keep the same. To lock what actually appears in the map, you want to go into the map item, into the items panel, select it, and then in the items property window under layers, choose lock layers. So again, this can be confusing. I have two maps and only one map source. So what happened is I created my first map. So you can see my maps here are called Inset Map and Halifax. Okay, so this is my Halifax map and this is my inset. When I added the first map and had it styled the way I wanted, I made sure I clicked the lock button here. So this lock button is going to lock the position, so I can't move the map or pan it around. Okay. If I actually wanted to lock the layer so that it didn't change when I went back to stylize my second map, I actually go down. I go into the item properties tab, and then I'm going to find specifically the layers option. And then I'm going to click the lock layers. So this is going to lock the layers so that they don't change when I adjust my main map in my main QGIS window. So again, it can be a little frustrating at first if you forget to lock, because then your maps are continually changing, but you get into it very quickly, and once they're locked, you're able to make changes to your main map without adjusting your layout. So now we're at the end of our QGIS session. It's important to realize that a QGIS project is not a single file. The QGIS file, the .qgz, does not contain the data. It only points to the location of where the data is located. Therefore, if you want to move a QGIS project from one location to another, one machine to another, you need to make sure that you move both the data and the project file. Okay, so again, the project file is that QGZ file. Okay, so you might ask yourself, well, what is actually saved in that QGZ file? Well, it's going to save the location of the data or the layers, so where it's actually looking. It's going to save the appearance or the symbology. It's also going to save your view area as well as your project bookmarks, so your extent. So again, the QGZ is never a very big file, but you need both that as well as the data if you're going to be moving it from one machine to another. So now we're ready to close QGIS. The first thing we want to do is close out of our layout window. We haven't made any changes, so we don't need to save it. So you're going to go to the Layout tab at the top and choose Close. Then we're going to exit out of the main QGIS window. Again, you're going to go to the Project tab in the upper left corner and choose Close. If it asks you if you'd like to save, that's up to you. It's not required for this particular exercise. We really haven't changed anything other than maybe the extents.
Now we're ready to close out of the QGIS. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is close out of the layout window. So remember, there's two windows here. One is the layout and one is our main QGIS page. So we're going to go to the layout tab up here in the corner of our layout window, and we're going to choose the close option because we've made no changes. Okay. Then in our main QGIS window, this time we're going to go to the project tab. It's again located in the upper left corner, and we're going to choose the close option. It's up to you if you want to save or not. I wouldn't say it's necessary. So essentially all we've been doing is zooming in and zooming out, and we might have a couple different layers turned on, but I'm going to say discard at this point. So you can see we've now logged out of our QGIS software.
So hopefully you've learned quite a bit while looking at our map and solving our problem. You've been able to learn that a GIS map is dynamic. You're able to zoom, pan, resize. You can add and remove features as you see fit. Although we didn't do it, you can change symbolization. So if you didn't like the yellow stars for attraction, you could adjust that. And you also learned how to access the database of information that's behind the individual features on the map. And truthfully, that's where the power of the GIS is. So you should have learned how a GIS map is organized. So you learned that a GIS map has got a map component to it. Each map has one or more layers that make up the information that's inside of it. Each layer has one or many features that make up inside of it. So if you think back to our attractions, for instance, we actually had 29 features or attractions on our map. We knew that. There was 29 yellow stars. When we opened the attribute table, we could see that there were 29 records relating to each one of the features that we saw on the map.
During this exercise, hopefully you learned how a GIS map was organized. You noticed that there were individual features that were on our map. So for instance, we had yellow stars representing attractions or orange dots representing hotels. Okay, each one of those features was located in a particular location. Hopefully you noticed they had a distinct shape. So they were either points, they were lines, or they were polygons when you're dealing with a vector map. Okay. And the other thing, hopefully you realized, is they were each giving their own symbology. Okay, the fact that the attractions were yellow stars and the hotels were orange dots. You also should have noticed that these features were grouped into layers. Okay, the items that were grouped into layers had a name. So in our case, there was 29 attractions all in the same layer, and they all had the same shape, meaning they were all points or all lines or all polygons. Okay. When things are grouped in a layer, they must have the same characteristics. Okay, so if you think about opening the attribute table, you'll notice they all had the same fields that could be populated. Okay. Something that may not have been as obvious, though, is that these features are basically located in the same geographic extent, or approximately. Okay, so typically speaking, when you have a GIS layer, it's got some sort of area that it's representing. So in our case, we had hotels for all of Nova Scotia. It'd be very unlikely that we would actually have hotels for a different country in that same file.
So again, when you're looking at layers, they contain features located within the same approximate geographic boundary. They don't have to be identical, but similar. Each layer represents a distinct theme, so we wouldn't keep our attractions in the same file as our hotels because they're representing different themes, one being accommodations, another being attractions. And they're drawn on top of each other to create an informative GIS map. So representing real-world objects in GIS. So in the vector GIS world, there are three types of features. Everything on your map was one of three types. They're either points, lines, or polygons. So points are those objects that have a single coordinate pair, a single XY, so they represent a single point. Lines, on the other hand, have a sequence of two or more coordinate pairs that are joined together. A polygon, on the other hand, has one or more lines whose start and end point are the same. Therefore, they can close and therefore can have individual colors and things like that and can be filled in. So here's an example of a real world map. So this is South America. So taking a look at this, what are the countries represented as? The rivers, the cities. So hopefully you'll see that the countries are basically filled in. So those are representing polygons, the rivers are lines, and the cities are being represented by points. So representation. Recognize that polygons are objects that have boundaries. These could be things like countries or building footprints or lakes. Lines, on the other hand, are objects that are too narrow to be represented as polygons. Some examples of these might be streets or rivers or telephone lines. And points are objects that are basically too small to be polygons. So you may be representing cities or trees or hospitals. How you represent them is really going to be dependent on the map scale. So for instance, if you're looking at a map of the world, cities will always be represented as points, never as polygons, okay? Whereas if you're looking at a map of a single city, then individual trees might be represented as points. Buildings could be either points or polygons depending on what level of scale that you're showing. So hopefully you're able to understand that a feature was more than just a picture on a map, okay? So there's the information that's associated with that feature. So for instance, in a road, you could have information like the name of the road, the speed, whether it's a one-way or two-way street, things like that. If it was a city you're looking at, the information that could be linked to it could be population, average monthly temperatures, the number of schools. So again, it's the information behind the features that really make GIS as powerful as it is. So what are attributes? These are types or categories of information. So if you think about when we open the table, it was called an attribute table. The attributes are the actual columns of information that's stored in an attribute table. Okay, so each feature was a row or going across, whereas the attribute was the column that was going vertically. So if anything was in the same layer, it must have the same attribute table, and therefore the same sort of information would be stored for all of those features in that same layer. So here's an example of an attribute table. This is the attribute table for the hotels. You can see it only shows the non-geometry related fields, okay? These attributes can be very different for every layer, so there's no required fields that you're seeing here. A little bit more about attributes. Features on your map are linked to the attribute table by a unique numerical identifier or ID. Every feature on your map has an ID, even if it's not shown in your attribute table. Typically speaking, there's a one-to-one relationship between the features on your map and the attributes or rows that are in your attribute table. So what does this mean? If you click on a feature on the map, you're able to see the attributes in a table if you want. If you select a record in the table, it's automatically going to select it on your map as well. This is going to allow you to start to ask questions of your attribute table and display your answers on the map. So we did this when we looked for all of the Delta hotels as an example. So here's an example. In this particular example, we're looking at various cities. You can see we've highlighted Mumbai in the attribute table, and it's automatically highlighted on the map. We also could have done this in the reverse order. We could have selected from the map and the record in the attribute table would have been highlighted. The last thing we're going to cover in today's session is map scale. So scale is the relationship between the size on a map and the size it is in the real world. It's typically expressed as a ratio or representative fraction. So a scale of 1 to 50,000 means 1 unit on the map is equivalent to 50,000 units on the Earth. So if it was 1 centimeter you measured on the map, that would be 50,000 centimeters on the Earth's surface, okay? Or 500 meters if you change the unit, okay? It also means, the other way to think about it, is objects on the Earth are 50,000 times larger than what they appear on the map. So when you're talking about map scale, sometimes people will talk about large scale and small scale map in general, okay? So what is a large scale map? Large scale map covers a small area in lots of detail, whereas a small scale map covers a large area in far less detail. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, but I'm going to show you an example.
Here's an example of two maps. Okay, which of these maps is a small scale map and which is the large scale map? So the map on the left is South America, showing all the various cities, whereas the map on the right is a map showing Peninsular Halifax. Okay, so which is the large scale map? Remember, large scale means small area in far more detail. So that would be the map on the right, or Peninsula Halifax. Whereas a small scale map means a large area, which would be the map of South America that's being shown on the left. Again, a little counterintuitive, but small area, large scale.
That's the end of our session for today, an introduction using QGIS. If you're interested in coming to the GIS Centre, we are located on the 5th floor of the Killam Library next to Special Collections. Remember, my name is Jennifer Strang. My email is jennifer.strang@dal.ca. You can reach me by phone at 902-494-1386. Or if you'd like to book an appointment with me or anyone in the centre, you can book online at bit.ly/30J capital F07 capital E. Look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.